Now, it's important to realize that the Bible that we have, that it can be trusted. In fact, the Bible, the New Testament, which is the newest part of the Bible, it kind of documents the life of Jesus, his life, his death, his resurrection, as well as the launch of the early church. The New Testament has over 25,000 manuscripts that are still in existence. Now, this is more than any other ancient document in human history. There is more documents of the New Testament. In fact, many of them are even from just a few years after the original writing. It has been studied and scrutinized by thousands of eyewitnesses, people who were actually there. It's been studied by tens of thousands of scholars, both biblical and academic, and it's been used by billions of people every day for them to base their life, their hope, their future, their eternity on the words in this book, in the Bible. Man, there is so much in there. This is the best-selling book of all time. I don't know if you know that. Best-selling book of all time. You think of other best-selling books. One of the other main best-selling books is one of the first novels ever printed, Don Quixote. You know, the knight who fights the windmill. Great story. And that has sold 500 million copies in the history of its publishing. The Tale of Two Cities, another great classic, 200 million. Little Prince, 140 million. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone has sold 120 million copies. The Hobbit, 100 million copies. The Bible has sold 10 times more than the second one there at 500 million. Sold 10 times that. 5 billion copies of the Bible have been sold. Every year, 100 million copies are sold. That means literally every second, 3 copies are sold. Every second. That's how many are being sold and distributed throughout the world. It's the book that has been translated into more languages than any other book. Well over 1,000 languages God's word has been translated into. And we have it so readily available, and yet many of us, we're not even super familiar with it, much less have we actually read it. And if you do read it, it's a little bit weird. It's kind of an odd book to read, honestly, because in your notes, we're going to break it down here. The Bible is a collection of 66 books by over 40 authors over a 1,500-year span. Over a 1,500-year span. So this is more of a collection of books rather than just a single book. And it has 2 sections in it. It has the Old Testament and the New Testament, or the Old Contract and the New Contract. The Old Testament pretty much documents the history of the Jewish people, and it was originally written in Hebrew and Aramaic. Then the New Testament, this primarily documents, as I just said, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus, as well as the start of the early church, and that was written in Greek. Then, around 405 AD, it was translated from those languages into Latin, and that was called the Latin Vulgate by some guy. We only know of him as the name Jerome. So this guy took the original languages, translated it into Latin. Then in the 1450s, it was the first book ever to be printed on a movable type printing press, the Gutenberg press, the Gutenberg Bible. Maybe you've seen one. I saw one. They have one in New Haven in their antique book section, and it's amazing to see, but that was the first book printed on a movable type press. Then in 1382, there was a guy by the name of John Wycliffe, and he was the first person to translate the Bible into English. But he didn't go from the original languages. He went from Latin into English. So you can think like it's got from a translation to a translation to a translation, or the original Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic into Latin, and then ultimately into English in 1382. Now, it seems like a good thing, but you wouldn't believe how many people have given their lives so that we can have these here with us today. You wouldn't believe it. For example, John Wycliffe, the first person to translate it into English, well, he made some enemies because of the fact that he did this. Some of the words that he chose to use, it frustrated the church powers that be at the time. One of the words that was really a controversial one is this word. It was the original in the Greek, it was ekklesia, which in the English means a gathering, but the people at large, the church of the day, they wanted that word to be church. Because when you think of church, you think of architecture, you think of buildings, you think of going someplace. Well, instead, he translated the word as gathering, and that ruffled some feathers. Now, the church would have killed him, however, he died of a stroke, and so they weren't able to put him to death. But they still called him a heretic, and they disliked him so much that he was buried on church property. They actually dug up his bones, his body, they burned it and threw it in the river and burned everything he wrote because they felt that he was undermining the power of the church because he said our faith should be based on the Bible alone. Then in 1526, William Tyndale, he translated the Bible from the original languages, not from Latin this time. He went to the original languages, made the first translation into English, and as you can imagine, everybody was so happy, right? No, absolutely not. They burned him at the stake. They killed him because they didn't want the Bible to be in the hands of the normal people. They wanted the priests to be the only ones who could read it. So that way, if you wanted to know God, you had to come to church, you had to give your money, you had to listen to their priest say whatever they wanted, and you had no way to verify the validity of what they were saying because you didn't have God's word in our modern language. In 1560, they had the Geneva Bible. This is the first one that divided it into chapters and books, and this was easier for you to go and reference and find things. But then, again, people didn't like it because it used that word. In many cases, it used the word community, it used the word gathering instead of the word church. And so the established church of the day, they wanted to be the primary people. The person that it ticked off the most was a guy by the name of King James. And King James did not like the fact that this English Bible was undermining the state-established church. He wanted everybody to come to his building, not have some gathering out in a field that they could call, their worship of God. No, you had to come to the church. So, as a result, he outlawed all the Bibles and he commissioned his own Bible to be translated. And he said, you can translate it as accurately as you can, but when you translate the word ecclesia, it cannot be used as gathering. It has to be used as the word church. And that is the King James Bible that we have. It was primarily, it was actually William Tyndale's Bible, but they just made a few modifications, that being one of them. So, many times people will come up and ask me, what's the best translation to read? Which one is the best? And my answer is always the same. It's the one that you'll actually read. And it's the one that you'll actually apply. Because here's the thing. People come and say, well, but this is the most accurate Bible. And this is the one. And I'm like, how often do you read it? Well, I don't read it, but Lord knows if I was going to read it, I'd read the accurate one. It's like, well, if you're not reading it, it ain't doing you any good anyhow, buddy. It's important that we get into it, that we read it, and that we apply God's word.